Good afternoon, everyone. This is Karen Chambers. We will give it a couple more minutes and we will get started at the top of the hour. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next Best Practices webinar. Thanks again for the huge response to our invitation. We've got several tips and tricks that we want to cover today, so hopefully you find this helpful. A survey will pop up at the end of our session, so please hang on and fill that out, or else it will come out with the recording an hour after our session closes as well. So we'd love to hear your feedback. A couple housekeeping items before we jump in. Everyone is placed in listen-only mode, so please submit any questions in the questions field of your GoToWebinar panel. We will work to address the questions via chat as they come in, and we may also address some of those questions live during the Q&A. And then let's, with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So yes, I'm Karen Chambers. I'm your Customer Success Manager. I've been running a couple of these webinars now, and I act as a liaison for our subscribers to learn where they stand with the software platform. And then from there, I can better assist with the best possible customer experience by facilitating learning material, setting support calls, or simply just answering questions as they come. So we want to ensure that our subscribers are using the software to its fullest capabilities. And with me today, I have our account executives, Jackie and Colton both, who will be assisting with best practice tips and also will assist during our Q&A. So today we will be walking through the following topics: table fill and flow, email notifications and integration, and what those differences are, how to set up transfers, and then of course we'll open the floor up for Q&A. And then please do shoot us a note in chat if you're ever unable to hear us at any point during the demonstration. So let's jump in now with Jackie, who will be walking us through the table fill, and allow me just a second to give him the power to drive. All right, Jackie, you should be good.
All righty. It says waiting to view Pat's screen. You guys getting that too? I can't select mine for some reason.
It says that Pat Lehman is currently the presenter, so maybe it was.
I am not sure how Pat is possibly a presenter. She's logged in as a staff user. I'm not sure how she got that login information.
She can help answer some questions later then too.
I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, Jackie, it says you're presenter now. I'm not
Yeah,
sure how to.
I just changed it. I think you should be good, Jack. Yeah.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Good morning or late afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I'm going to be talking about table fill today. So if you've seen our order modifications, you might be a little bit familiar with table fill. I'm not going to be talking about order modifications today, but I'm going to be showing you how table fill can just be used in general, maybe some other uses that we can come up with, and just get everyone kind of brainstorming over the use cases for table fill. So as I go through this, please don't hesitate to submit any questions in the little questions box there. And if you have any ideas for table fill that you think might work, might not work after this, feel free to send us an email at support@rpm telco.com, and we'll be happy to see if we can work together on it. So the first thing I'm going to show is the top left menu processes. I'm just going to go back into order mods just to kind of show you the table itself, and then I'm going to go into another use case for it. So on one of my orders, so as a backdrop, this table here, order details, is a table fill table. In short, the table fill is taking data from another process and putting the data back into our target process. So source process being the order modifications process, and then the target process being my orders. Is how we think of table fill. It's always data from one source to another, and table fill allows us to take data from a form or even data from another table and put it into a table in another process. So the use case I'm going to be talking about today is, instead of order modifications, we're going to be going through something a little simpler and clicking through my sold through field here, which is a field to represent which master agency fulfilled this order. So if I click on sold through here, it's going to take me to my sold through process, which is just a process that holds all of my sold through master agents. So if you're not on this list, I had to just come up with this off the top of my head, so I apologize if you did not make my demo list on here. But if you want to be on our demo list, just give me an email and I'll add you to it. So general master agency is just a general example, and what I want to do here is take my orders that are fulfilled by this master agent, and I want to summarize it in here through a table. So at a glance, I could see all of my order MRCs, the status levels, and maybe just get a general idea of the totals of contracts fulfilled by this master agency, and maybe an average install date for how long it takes to fulfill orders, anything like that, we can sum up with table fill. In short, the referenced in here for my 3 orders is kind of what we're expecting to see with table fill. I know that this master agency is referenced on 3 orders, and if I give this a click, it take me directly to these 3 orders. The purpose of this table is going to kind of make things a little more summarized and shorten the amount of clicks it takes to get to these this order information. So you can just look at your orders by clicking on the referenced in, but the benefit of table fill is being able to run formulas off of the data, so we can total things up, and we could see the total MRC of certain statuses or certain levels of orders and anything like that through table fill. And that's what I'm going to be showing you here right now. So the first thing we have to do to set up a table fill is go to the back end, go into setup, go into fields, and we have to add a table. So if I put my table in here, I like to make it 2 columns so it's a little bigger, and then I just like to call my table where I'm pulling data from. So in this scenario, I am pulling my data from the orders, so I'm going to call it the orders table. And the type, I'm going to leave it as free row because we want to have a free number of rows because we don't know the set number of orders that are going to come in. And I don't even know if you can do table fill and define row tables, so leave that for another experiment. So the next thing we want to put on the table is the most important field. It is the reference to the source data. So in this case, I am referencing a process, so I clicked process reference, and I am referencing the orders because that's where I'm taking the information from. So we'll call it order number in this case, hit finish, and that adds us our process reference. And at this point in the setup, I get to decide how I want the data to come through. There's 2 general trains of thoughts here. I could pull in a shared field. So now that I have the order reference, the table fill will take care of, well, once we set up the table fill is going to take care of filling in all of my referenced in. So what at the earlier screen when we were looking at the 3 orders that were referencing this sold through, it would take those 3 orders and fill in that table with the order number. But for data, I can choose to either share the data just through a shared field. So total order MRC, for example, which will, when after my table fill is set up, it's going to fill that data in automatically. Or I can choose to put a corresponding field type. So again, with order MRC, we'll just put MRC in here as a money field. And the table fill will also fill this in for us for the data. Yeah, I wonder if there's any other thing I might want to put in here. Yeah, let's put a reference field in, and let's do supplier as well, because that's pretty useful. So when I go to set up my table fill, I'm going to expand on this a little bit more, but pretty much the main differences between MRC and this MRC is that one is shared and one is not. The shared one cannot be used in filters. So if you're looking to, say, filter on the data and not just view it from the form, it's a better idea to make it a actual field type and flow the data in or fill the data in from table fill. And generally, if you're not sure of which to do, best rule of thumb is always just to try and replicate the field types from your order or from your source process. So if you're wanting to bring in MRC from your order, make a money field, call it MRC, and fill it in that way. But the next step after making this table is I'm going to go to the setup. I'm going to click just under my process flow table fill. And under my order details, or not under any of these, I'm going to add a complete new one because we're not talking about order mods. I'm going to be going into order and my target process. So source process order, that's where I'm taking the data from. My target process is sold through. And the target field will be the table I just made. If you don't have any option in target fields, it's just due to you not having a corresponding table that works with table fill. If also another thing to bring up is if you have repeating fields turned on for your process, you cannot use table fill at all. So if you go to set this up for, say, your opportunity that generally has repeating fields turned on, it's not going to work. You're just not going to have the option to put it in there. So yeah. So if I hit OK, it's going to bring me to this table fill page with some conditions here on the left that I'll get into in a little bit. And then more importantly, on the right is the mapping. If I hit edit, it's going to fill in the relationships for me, so I don't have to worry about it. Order to sold through, pretty much source to target. That's what we're looking for. And then the next important part is under source from orders, I can choose the kind of data that comes through here. So from form, for example, is pulling the data from the entire order form, but I can also flow table to table. If I wanted to, say, take data from my details table, my products table, I could flow it into another table on my sold through. Some other uses for this is if you had a products table on your quote that is not a repeating field opportunity, you could take the data from that products table and flow it into your order products table. It's kind of like table flow. If you've used process flow in the past and you're wondering why we can't flow table data, this is kind of a soft workaround for it. You could flow data from table to table that way. The one drawback is that the tables are then interlinked. So if you change data on your source, it would change it on your target as well. But and then your target process cannot be changed whatsoever. You can only make changes on the source. So yeah, that's pretty much it with that. So in this case, I want to set it to form because I want to fill my sold through with all of my orders. And when it comes to mapping, you'll notice I have MRC and carrier, but my shared field does not show up here. That's because the shared field doesn't ever get filled in. It's sharing data from another source. So when I click on my from source form dropdowns, this is just pulling data from my order, and it's corresponding with the field type. So that's why it was important to have MRC be MRC or MRC be money, because it is only going to give me options for money and formula fields to fill into my money field. And then carrier is the only one option because it was a supplier reference field and there's only one corresponding supplier reference field on my order. So if I hit OK, that successfully links up my table fill. And one easy way to test if you did it correctly is if you go to your processes or back into our sold through, we'll click on the general master agent here, and then we'll go under more and evaluate. So evaluation will just refresh the form and pull in all of the data. So all of my orders now show up under here. When you first set up table fill, you will have to evaluate on your pretty much entire process. If I click up here, it's under the more and evaluate, and that'll just look through all of the forms in your process and evaluate them. When you're testing it, you might want to just evaluate one because evaluation can take a little while. If you're doing, say, 3,000 order forms or anything like that, it would take a little bit. Going forward with table fill, it should automatically fill in the data for you without having to do anything. Situations where that won't happen. After you edit a form, for example, you'll get a big message at the top that says evaluate related forms. Just make sure to give that a click. And if you ever go into your fields or your forms here and you're not sure if this data is accurate, you can always just go to more and hit evaluate to double check. So yeah, that's some general tips there. And the last thing I want to cover is some limitations with the table fill. If I go back up to setup here into table fill, look at this one. So this is the one we just made. The limitations are that there's only a limit of 300 rows per table. So if your table fill, you're playing with a lot of data, and you hit that 300 row limit, there is no warning message or anything like that. It's just going to stop filling in data. That's just due to speed reasons. Some ways around that, or if you know you're working with a lot of data, is to kind of plan around it. So the conditions here on the left allow you to choose when tables are filled in. So if your master agency has fulfilled, say, 3,000 orders as an example, and there's no way that's going to fit into one table, we could make a table for each carrier as a general thing. We can add a condition and just say, I want this table to only fill in when it's under this carrier. And that's one way you can segment your tables into smaller tables so you don't hit that 300 limit as quickly. But either way, the table fill allows you to set conditions on it. So you can fill tables in when certain conditions are met. So if you wanted to do it based off of like a customer or only show certain orders from certain states or any example like that, that's how you do it through the conditions here. And yeah, that is table fill. I know everyone has probably a ton of questions or anything like that. Any use cases, again, if you find any uses for it that you think may work, but you're not really sure on, please give me an email. I'd be more than happy to advise on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to turn it over to Colton now. And here we go. I am having a time today.
All right. There we go. We should be good now. All right. Well, hello, everyone. As Karen mentioned, today I'm going to be covering some best practices with regards to our email integration and email notification capabilities with our software. A couple of reasons. The first one just being to create awareness around the fact that these are functionalities within our software. And then the second one just being that sometimes our subscribers think that these are maybe the same thing, and they're in fact very different. So I'm going to jump right into it, starting with our email integration. So I'm going to go to the top left menu in RPM here and down to our setup. And you'll see on the bottom right here, we have our email integration. So if I click into that, the first step is actually setting up the email integration. It's done through what's called an IMAP account. So you'll see here we have our account, we have our IMAP server, we have our port, and then we have a dedicated email address that we're going to use for all of our email integrations. For those of you who don't know, IMAP stands for Internet Message Access Protocol. So essentially, you're just creating that dedicated email address that you're going to use for all of your email integrations. So again, that's the first step that you'll need to do in setting up your email integration. And then over here on the right, you'll see that we have some different aliases, and then we have the corresponding process. So if you're looking to integrate an email into a process form, you'll need this alias when you're actually forwarding that email in the subject line. And we'll get into a little bit more detail on how this works when I show a live integration. Same thing goes down the list. Each process will have its own alias involved. So I'll show you kind of a live version of how this will look. Just in our own CRM, I've made up kind of a mock form here. You'll see that this is one of the opportunities. The form number is important with email integration. What's used is this form number combined with the alias for that process. So in this case, you'll see that opportunities is here, and we have our alias as LCL. So to integrate this, an email into this specific form, I'll show you, I have, again, a mock email here, and we'll simply go into the email and forward it to our destination address, and I'll show you. So in this case, as I mentioned in that initial setup, you'll have this dedicated IMAP account. I'll just copy this over and we'll throw it in here. And then you'll simply need to edit the subject when you're sending the email. As I mentioned, you'll want to take that alias, so LCL, and then that form number. And that's what RPM is going to be scanning for through that integration. So I'll just say, you can add whatever text you want, but the main thing is we have that alias and the form number. So I'll just send that through. And this might take a minute. I'll just refresh this form. If I go into our email integration in the actual setup section, you'll see on the bottom left here that we have an activity log. So you'll see the last check was done today at 11:02 a.m. Right now the inbox is empty. If I check again, like I said, this might take a minute, but we should see a match here, and then I'll show you where it actually pulls into the form. Actually, before it actually goes in, where you will see it right here is this email section. So on each individual form, you'll see that there's an email section. So this specific email that I'm integrating in pertains specifically to this form. whether that be communication with the customer or potential customers, since this is an opportunity, or maybe you know, you're communicating with your salespeople about the specific opportunity, whatever the case may be there. So I'll just do one more check, and it's still empty, of course, but let's take a look. I had a feeling this might happen just because something always seems to happen when we do these things, but there we go, completed, one matched. So I'll go in here and I'll refresh this form. And if you scroll down, you'll see that that email is now integrated into the form. And then you can click directly into it. So that's going to show you the chain of communication between, like I said, maybe it is the customer or the sales guys, and it can show you everything that you need to see that relates to this form. If maybe you integrate the wrong email by accident, you can trash it or move it to the correct form. But for now, I'll just trash this one. But yeah, that is how email integration works, setting up those aliases and then using those combined with the form number to that dedicated IMAP account. So I'll just go back out to our demo version here so that we can jump into email notification. So email notification is used essentially to stay proactive on things that are happening within your RPM. It's related to the processes that you have in your RPM, and you can create notifications within each process depending on a few different things based on how you want to be notified and when you want to be notified. So you'll see here, this is just our demo order process, but you'll see maybe you want to be notified on if a status changes for a specific order. So you'll see here right now, if this order was changed to pending installation, maybe you want an automated email reminder, maybe 30 days out to follow up with that customer or check in and see if that order has actually been installed. That's where the email notification will come into play. Another good example right below it here is expecting first commission. So based on the date that's entered in, and I'll just show you where that you can find that. So you'll see here that we have our expecting first commissions of January 1st. So you can set an email notification where you're going to get notified and you're going to say, hey, were we actually paid on this? Have we received our commissions on this deal? And I'll show you if I go into the actual setup of our order. Actually, before I do that, just a couple more examples I'd like to touch on. Something like contract sign date or contract renewal date. It's a really good way to stay proactive on those renewals, make sure that you're retaining those customers, and really a good way to have those emails reminding you of what's going on with all your orders. So if I jump into the setup here, and I navigate over to our workflow tab. So those examples I was just talking about are examples of action triggers that we have. Another thing is based on status triggers. So based on something that is entered into a field, you can automatically set a certain status for that form. So a good example here, a use case for the email notification would be, you know, expecting first commission. So you're getting notified one day before that expected first commissions date. You get a little message here, did I receive my commissions yet? If you check that account and you have received those commissions, you can go in and set that first commissions received date. So if I was to go back out to the form, there's another date field in there. And this is where you can utilize the status trigger. So as soon as you enter that date into the first commissions received, it's automatically going to set your status for that form to commissioning. Now, as far as the actual email notification goes, if I just go back to our template, and you'll find it right here. So in the middle of our template tab on the order setup, you'll see that you can turn it on or off based on the user that's enabled within the subscription. So for your staff users, as an example, if you look a little bit lower down, you can actually control the content that you're receiving in that email. So, you know, if you want to add some more form info here, but right now we just have a status of that form, when it was started. You can add additional fields below, but right now we have the basic stuff, customer name, term, original MRC, and you kind of get the idea there. So yeah, that's how email notification is set up and configured, and you can establish that on multiple different things within your processes within RPM. So Without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Karen to cover our transfers.
Alrighty. Let's take a look. All right, guys. So now we're going to walk through our transfer setup, which I'm actually really excited to talk through. Even just yesterday, we uncovered a client that hadn't been utilizing this functionality yet, and so it's hopefully going to be helpful for several of you out there. So what exactly is a transfer? When we say transfers, we are referring to the transferring of commission data from one master agency or supplier to another partner. So the benefits of doing so are that the transfers enable you to save time by pulling the data directly into your subscription from another agency or supplier, rather than waiting for that agency to send you a spreadsheet and then you have to work from there to import that data. So let's walk through the process. To kick this off, the first thing that you want to do is contact that agency from which you wish to transfer the data, and request that they provide you with login credentials to set up the transfer. So here's a little side note. For those of you that are considering opening up this transfers functionality for your subagents, you can enable this option by updating one of the subagents users to an agency manager. So I'll walk through this at the end of my demonstration, just to be clear. All right, so to get started, you're going to hit your top left menu and go into import data, suppliers. And then from here, you have a couple different options. Some subscribers like to break this out and use an abbreviation to illustrate exactly which transfer this is. For example, right here we have Intelisys_ACC business. So we know that that is specifically for an Intelisys transfer for ACC business. On the other hand, we also have call one up here, which is an umbrella supplier, if you will. If we click into it, you can see under imports and transfers that this houses all the different transfers rather than one specific. So we have Telecom Place transfer, it's coming from Telecom Place. Up here we have Playground for Jackie's transfer coming from Playground for Jackie. Okay, so for the sake of today's example, we're going to back out and we'll use good old AT&T. Okay, and then we'll dial into imports and transfers. Okay, and so to get started, we want to hit add a transfer. And since this is quote unquote your first time setting this up, we're going to use new logon. And this is where you're going to enter in those credentials that we just talked about, coming from that master agency or the supplier. Then you would click next. I'm going to use one that's already somewhat set up. So we've got our credentials for Playground for Jackie. Okay. So up top, this to supplier AT&T, that is going into your supplier AT&T, okay? And it's coming from Playground for Jackie, from his AT&T supplier, okay? Does that make sense? Moving down, these three bolded items here, those are required to be filled out. You want to make sure that those are matching just as you would for a regular import matrix. One caveat here is, you guys may already know this, for Intelisys, you always want to make sure that this says account, pointing towards assignment code. But for anybody else, we'll leave that as assignment code. Okay. These following three items, customer, net build, and gross commission, we find that those are usually very popular data points that want to be imported, so make sure, or transferred. So you'll want to at least have those three usually, and then whichever other ones you want to include. And then you click finish. So I think we are good up there, yeah? Okay. Okay, now we've got our transfer for AT&T down here. Okay, so we are not done yet. We've got it set up, but now we need to actually move on it. So we'll go back up to our main menu to import data. And then we're going to click transfer. And you can see my transfer set up right there. Okay. A note here on this big orange box. These are the other additional transfers that are available to you that are not currently set up yet. So those credentials are what's pulling this information here. So you can also set up for 8x8, Accessa, and Acme Hosting. Okay, those are just some example suppliers. Okay, and then we'll click finish. All right, done. Okay. So I did want to go back and talk through how to update your rep to an agency manager to enable this functionality. So for those of you who are possibly going to open up this capability to your subagents, this is what you want to see. Click into your top menu there. Under users, you're going to want to make sure that you select the user or rep that's going to be using this capability. So let's just say Bill. Bill's the one that we want. We're going to click into Bill here. And as you can see, he's just a rep as of right now. You can see that he's also disabled. Okay. We want him to be enabled and we want him to become a manager so that he can use this transfer capability. So just by clicking also a manager on this left side here, that updates him to have this the ability to use this transfer functionality. So you can see up here on the top right that he's now a manager, and then we would send a password reset since he's disabled so that he can log on. Okay. And if Bill were already enabled and we clicked that that last button for also a manager, it would update him right then and he could still use those same credentials that he was currently using for his existing access to RPM. Okay. So I believe that's all that I had for you at this point for walking through the process. Something that I want to add, we do realize that our subscribers may not be aware of exactly what all agencies have this transfers function enabled. So what we'd like to do is actually publish a list of these available transfers. So included in the survey that's going to pop up right at the close of this session, and then also included with the recording in the email. We're going to request if you would like to be added to this list, and please let us know if you want to be included so that we can open this up to our other partners. So with that being said, we're going to move into our open Q&A. So please again submit any questions via the questions chat function, and we'll be happy to answer. Let's see. Anybody have any questions? I'm not seeing any come through at this point. Okay, guys, I think we're good. And as usual, all three of these topics are covered in detail within our knowledge base. So just type in, transfers or email notification, integration, anything that we talked about today, and you should pull plenty of articles and videos to walk you through. And then, of course, we're always available at support@rpmtelco.com, ready and willing to assist if you have any questions. So if no other questions are going to come in, I think I'm going to bring this session to a close. Please let us know if you have any questions, and then hang tight. The survey is going to pop up as soon as we end right here. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time. Y'all have a wonderful day.